My childhood attic wasn't charming. It was a dusty, low-ceilinged tomb filled with mothballs, broken furniture, and zero light except for the 4 cheap citronella candles we brought up. The rain outside was absolutely pounding on the roof, and the power was flickering on and off. We had one of those horrible, cheap Ouija boards. The plastic planchette looked like something you'd get out of a cereal box, but we were serious. As I sat across from my best friend Chloe, I followed in sync with her, placing my fingers on the top of the planchette. "Is anyone here?" she asked before we both sat in silence, not knowing what to expect. After 5 minutes of silence, just as we were about to quit, the planchette shuddered. It moved slow and deliberate to yes. We were dizzy with fear and excitement. I asked, "Who are you?" It spelled out E-L-I-A-S. Chloe, completely spooked, whispered, "What do you want, Elias?" It spelled out Y-O-U. "This is stupid," Chloe, while beginning to stand up. That's when I made the mistake. I pushed Chloe. Months earlier, Chloe had told her parents she was visiting her aunt in Oregon, but she had actually spent a weekend 3 states away in a cheap motel with a boy our parents definitely didn't know about. It was her most guarded, private secret. I was the only person who knew the truth, but I didn't know the specifics. I challenged Elias. "Chloe, ask him about the trip, the one you lied about." Chloe flinched, but she leaned back in and day down. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Elias, where was I in July?" The planchette didn't just glide, it shot across the board with frightening force, pulling my fingers with it. It spelled out R-O-O-M 302. Chloe's face went white. At that exact moment, a wave of icy air, colder than any autumn draft, washed over us. It didn't feel like a draft. It felt wrong. Then, the final trigger. The planchette, completely untouched, now started spinning frantically in the center of the board. The whirring, the sound it made was awful. With a loud, sharp crack, one of our candles snapped clean in half and went out, filling the air with smoke. We didn't talk. We just scrambled out, grabbing the board, and didn't stop running until we were outside, soaking wet in the downpour. We dug a hole beneath the biggest oak tree in the backyard and buried that board like it was a body. Years later, Chloe told me she drove by the old house, and the oak tree had been cut down for a deck. She said she looked at the dirt, but she couldn't dig. We're adults now, but honestly, every time my lights flicker or a door slams shut when the windows are closed, I flash back to the sound of that frantic, spinning piece of plastic. It's the only secret we never truly grew out of. The farm was supposed to be a fresh start. Leave the city, buy a patch of land upstate, and live that quiet, rustic life. My wife, Sarah, was handling the house interior, the dusty bookshelves, the peeling wallpaper, but I'd claimed the grounds, especially the collection of old outbuildings. The last structure on the property line was a lean-to shed, barely standing, that the realtor had advised me to just burn down. I decided to clean it first. The air inside the shed was thick with the smell of mold and forgotten oil. After clearing out rusted traps and broken ceramic pots, I found it jammed behind a stack of rotted lumber. It wasn't a toy store board. This was something heavy, wood-burned, and almost black with age. The lettering was elegant but faded, and the planchette was a piece of polished slate, perfectly heart-shaped. It looked less like a game and more like an antique ritual tool. I carried it back to the house, dusted it off, and set it on the dining room table. When Sarah came down, she just squinted at it. "What's that? A decorative cutting board? Looks creepy." "It's a Ouija board," I admitted. "Old one. Found it in the shed." "Burn it," she said flatly. "I don't need bad vibes in the new house." I agreed to burn it, but curiosity is a persistent disease. Later that night, after Sarah was asleep, I took the board and the slate planchette down to the basement, the only room with a lock. I told myself it was for a joke, or maybe just to prove to myself how foolish the whole thing was. I lit a single, sputtering candle. The basement, with its dirt floor and stone walls, felt instantly colder. I placed the planchette in the center of the board, rested my fingers lightly on it, and asked, "Is there anyone here?" Nothing. I laughed under my breath, ready to pack it up and go to bed. "If you're here," I tried again, "give me a sign." The candle flame didn't flicker, but the planchette began to tremble beneath my fingertips. It wasn't my movement. It felt like a tiny internal vibration. Then, with a slow grinding resistance, it moved. Yes, my heart thumped hard against my ribs. My initial skepticism dissolved completely, replaced by pure, freezing adrenaline. "Who are you?" My voice sounded thin and reedy in the dark basement. The planchette moved deliberately, spelling out Jacob. "Jacob," I whispered. "Were you the owner of this farm?" Waiting. Okay, not a great response. I decided to try to ground him in reality, ask for something specific. Only he would know something about the property. "Jacob, did you hide the keys to the shed? I'd been searching for them all week." DIRT? Too vague. I tried again, focusing on a more obscure fact I'd read in the closing documents. The property records say the original well was capped. Where exactly was it? The planchette glided, spelling out MINE. I hesitated. That wasn't right. The well was capped, not his. I leaned in, trying to rationalize it, when the planchette shot across the board to spell out something else, completely unprompted. RINGUNDERKITCHENSTEP. This time, I was genuinely shaking. I had spent all day tearing out the crumbling kitchen steps. There was a section of the foundation that was just loose dirt, and I was sure I had seen something metallic glinting there, but I dismissed it as an old piece of scrap metal. "What ring?" I managed. HERS. The air pressure in the room seemed to drop. The darkness in the corners suddenly felt like it was pressing in. Jacob wasn't just a ghost. He was a desperate, territorial presence. The shed, the property, the well, it was all his. My hand was sweating so badly it slipped from the planchette. Without my guiding touch, the slate heart didn't stop. It began to slide, faster and faster, spiraling out of control across the wood until it landed squarely on the Z. And then it kept going, scraping against the wood, past the letter, right up to the edge of the board. I didn't need any more proof. I ripped the board off the table. In a panic, I carried it and the planchette outside and grabbed the small sledgehammer from the garage. I smashed the board on the driveway, the wood splintering into a dozen pieces. Then I took the slate planchette and shattered it with a final, sickening crunch. I tossed the pieces into the bottom of the old empty cistern near the shed. I never told Sarah about the basement session, but the next morning I went back to the loose dirt under the porch where I'd been working. Digging with my hands about 6 inches down, I found a small tarnished platinum band engraved with the initials JM plus ED and the date 1965. I don't know who ED was or why Jacob buried her ring, but I recapped that well and I sealed the basement and I never touched that shed again. I bought this farm for a fresh start, but I realized that night that I didn't buy a house. I bought a legacy and I was going to have to share it with Jacob forever.